So, hello everybody. Are you still alive? I think after 4 hours of talks, you may be a little bit tired, and now we are coming to talk about darkness and how actually what we can learn from blind people and how they make us see. Well, actually, before I'm going to start talking about how the blind make us see, maybe it's very interesting to understand how they actually see and what they see. And of course, we know blind people usually don't see, but they have, of course, a very, very high and enhanced sense of tactile perception, so they can even read books with their hands, with their fingers. Then, of course, they have a very, very improved audition, and I'm all the time very much amazed when I meet a blind friend after years, and he identified me by my voice and knows my name and everything, so it's really, really amazing the capability, I think, to keep, and let's say, an audio memory. And of course, on the other side, blind people are somehow like bats because they have a very, very special perception. It's called the eco-perception, which helps them to detect very quickly obstacles, shapes of objects, and so on. So there is a certain, improvement. And what I all the time, learn in my, let's say, now for 30 years, actually, I'm in contact with blind people, is every loss is a certain gain. So you gain something through a loss. Well, talking about, let's say, what and how people improve and what people take out of this, special setting of capabilities, of senses, and we can go back, I think, to ancient Greek, where you have, let's say, Homer. And Homer was, I think, the founder, maybe, or the first, let's say, European writer. I think he paved our way for the so-called Abendland. Then we have Democritus, and he was the one, he's a founder, and actually, of modern science, and he it's a very, very special case because what he did, he blinded himself to be less distracted on one side, on the other side, I think, to gain more insight. So Democritus is influenced highly Aristotle and Socrates, for instance. Then we have, Justitia, as you know, I think the goddess of justice. Why? I think she is blindfolded. Why? I think the mythology imagine that she has, the talent, the capability, the way, I think, to speak, judge in a right way, because I think she is not, trapped by her assumption, driven by visual information. And of course, I think we have, I talk about audition, and I spoke about, this high capability to hear much better than sighted people. Well, this is Georg Friedrich Händel. He turned blind when he was old. Then we have Johann Sebastian Bach. He turned blind when he got old. What it means, and still composing, and very, very still, compensating in a certain way his condition of being blind. I think this gentleman, Andrea Bocelli, this we know. We have, of course, heard about Ray Charles, very important, and we have, of course, Stevie Wonder. And all these guys, I think, were born blind or became blind in their later life and enriched our life. So we can actually learn a lot from blind people. You may say, okay, well, it's clear that, let's say, blind people and music is somehow a logical, combination. But even when you think about, let's say, non-music or non-audition-based, improvements, I can refer to Galilei, which you hopefully all know, became blind when he was 68 years old. And then we have this gentleman, Roosevelt, who became blind too. And you know, I think to be a politician, sometimes it's even helpful to close your eyes and maybe to copy blind people. Then we have another very, very interesting case. This gentleman is Claude Monet. I think he is a founder maybe of modern art and Impressionism, and what he did is actually he used his capability to have low vision in order to invent a completely new way to paint. So the Impressionism is based on the visual impairment of Claude Monet. And the other example is Vincent van Gogh, who was colorblind, and he had, of course, a special technique to paint his paintings very thickly, that he has somehow more texture and more structure, and what he saw is actually was then translated into pictures. So when somebody tells you, wow, I think blind people are actually the ones who give us a completely new dimension of painting, you may be surprised. So how the blind make us see? Let me continue. This ball pen is a technical device invented by father of a visually impaired girl he was also, let's say, a bit disturbed when the girl was writing and she blurred the writing because the ink was not, how to say, drying in, fast enough. So he invented the ballpoint. So I think the first ballpoint was a technical device to compensate, I think, vision. Then, of course, you know this gentleman, Ray Kurzweil. He's definitely, I think, one of the most provoking thought leaders in these days. And his inspiration to start thinking about digital age came through the encounter with blind people, and then he invented the first optical character recognition, his first word-to-speech synthesizers. So Kurzweil, one of really the most provoking thought leaders in these days, he was truly inspired by blind people. And now comes a bit of self-promotion, and it was mentioned. So now for 30 years, I'm actually doing Dialog in the Dark, an exhibition in total darkness, where I employ blind people. When you are coming, you are blind, and the blinds are sighted. So it's easy as it is now in 40 countries. That's the reason why I'm an Ashoka Fellow. Well, and this other lady here, this is Verena Bentele, who is, how to say, one of these, how to say, heroes in my blind gallery, and she is with us. Verena, well, you won 12 gold medals, when I'm not mistaken. Well, you are a motivational speaker, now you are a governor. Well, you do everything, more or less. And now you had just listened, I think, to my gallery. Do you feel superior?
So after that firework from inspiring people, let me say I'm a mixture between Justitia and perhaps Andrea Bocelli or something. No, just joking. So I think the very interesting thing is you learn other things if you're blind, and that's what I mean. But I don't think every blind person is a hero like Andreas want you make you to know. So Andreas just told you about the persons like Ray Charles or someone, but perhaps Holger Schmidt, the blind man who is boring as a lot of other people, he is existing as well. No, that's joking, but to be serious, I think for blind persons there are barriers. There are things you cannot do. For example, in my life, one interesting thing is a lot of people don't talk with me. They just talk with my assistant or someone and are asking, is she hungry? And I say, yes, she is. And you can have a conversation in that style half an hour. And so I think one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest distance points perhaps is that in the foreground for many people, there stands just blind person cannot have eye contact and cannot have a direct communication channel to me, and so that makes very much persons very uncomfortable. And perhaps Andreas, that's why you changed the perspective and was the founder of Dialog in the Dark. Do you think blind are favored or are better in the dark than in daylight? Well,
I think my motivation comes truly out of a very, very strong egoism and, of course, a lack of self-esteem. When you are in contact with blind people, and Daniela and Verena, can you give an example? She thinks I'm looking like George Clooney, right?
No, I don't think. I know that. I know he's not.
Okay. No, but
I have good friends who explain to me.
I think he's an ongoing disappointment. But okay, that's how it is. Well, no, but I think when you ask me whether blind people are more capable, let's say in the dark, yes, of course they are more capable. But what we are doing with Dialog in the Dark is not an exhibition to simulate blindness. It's not the case. It is much more to bring you in a different mode of perception, and of course to be, let's say, facing your limits, and of course developing a matter of trust, because trust is maybe the most important glue in social terms. And talking about trust, well, I know a little bit, of course, your story, and well, I think if I'm not mistaken, but please correct me, but not in front of the others, please. It's that you had 1 year before the Olympic Games in Vancouver, right? There was a story, and you may tell it better, but you had a very, very tough, let's say, accident, because the guy who was guiding her in the what is this, loop, or how you call it?
Yeah, it's the loop or the slope. Yes.
Slope, yeah. And he said left and right is relative, and left in this case was right, and so she fell down and broke your hip, and the kidney was taken out 1 year before the Olympics, and then after 1 year of, let's say, rehabilitation, you won, I don't know what, 4 gold medals. So how
it was 5.
This
Sorry, it was 5.
Okay. Yeah.
No, just
yeah. Okay. Thank you, Verena.
If Andreas is telling that it sounds so easy, but 5 gold medals is a lot of work. So, no, perhaps I think the interesting thing is we always say in Germany we have that quote, the blindes Vertrauen, the blind trust, and I don't think that trust is so blind. So I think it is a very much work and a hard work to have trust in other persons and in yourself as well, to be self-confident as well. So for me that is one interesting thing. So perhaps the imagination of a lot of people is blind persons have to trust in everybody, have to go with everybody. I don't have to, I decide myself. So the interesting thing is for me in sport, for example, I have to have a guide, and this guide is leading me across the ski slope, and if that guide is leading me by voice, then it's very important that he can decide where is left and where is right. So if he can't do, then accidents like that one Andreas told you about are happening. And so for me, one of the interesting things is how people can learn special abilities and can build out special abilities and don't just be concentrated on things they're don't going. And so for blind persons, for example, the trust comes with the training. And so I think trust is a case of training as well and not a case of if you're blind or sighted. And I think the other important thing is you need adaptations to cross the barriers you have. And for me, for example, in the biathlon sport, the adaptation is shooting by the ears. So I get a tone signal on a headset, and when I move the rifle, then that signal changes. And if I get the highest beep, then I'm in the target and shoot and have a boop listening signal if it's a match, and if it's a burp, then it's a mistake and 150 meters extra. And I think that burp, that is an important thing for persons with and without blindness. Because if you want to have the trust in other persons, then the first and very important thing is the fact of communication. And I think that is what perhaps blind people are a little bit better in or better trained in, because you're not always looking around what happens in your surrounding. You are very concentrated on spoken communication, and perhaps that is one advantage to have beside other advantages, like, for example, the display of my iPhone is always switched off. I don't need it, and that saves my akku. That's great. So sometimes you have a little advantage as well.
Okay, well, thank you for this, how to say, hint, how to save energy. But how to, let's say, avoid disappointments. And you talk about that trust can be trained. And you wrote the book, Control is Good, but Trust is Better. I think it's a pretty good title, and especially knowing your story that you fell down the valley and then broke whatever can be broken. What, let's say, sighted people, non-blind people can actually learn from blind people in terms of trust? Or are we just equal? I'm good looking and you are so and so, or what is it? How is it?
It is like you said, no. I think the important thing is I know in which parts of my life I need a guide. I think that's the most interesting thing. For my skiing, for example, or now in my work in Berlin or through whole Germany, I need my assistants who show me, for example, where the important persons are standing. So going first to Angela Merkel, to the Bundeskanzler, and afterwards to other not so important persons. I need my assistant to do that correctly and to say, okay, I be your eye and show you the right way. And I know in which parts of my life the guide play a very important role. And I think other person, perhaps like you, Andreas, perhaps you can tell us afterwards, you need as well where your guide is and who is your guide. But I think a lot of people are more concentrated on doing everything themselves. And for me, I can do a lot of things myself. Other persons who are sighted perhaps have problems with, but for me, the part where my guide is important for me, like on the ski slope when I ski down with 40 kilometers, or on the tandem when I do a 500-kilometer race in 2 weeks, then it's important to have sitting before me a person who is not so blind as I am. So that's good to know where your borders are, where your limit is, and perhaps to find a way how to push away that border or how to change your limit.
But I think you are, wow, amazing. Well, if I do, let's say, 5 kilometers on my bike, so I'm quite proud, and you do 500.
But do you think you need a guide as well?
No. My wife is my wife are my eyes, actually.
Yes, she is. I can.
Yeah, come. That's another topic. Why we are blinded by love, so I can tell you later. No, but I think the point is, you were born blind, or you lost your eyesight in a pretty young age, right?
No, I was born blind, so I just learned everything blindly. I learned, for example, listening to the wall. I hear the wall behind us, for example. You can do the test, not here inside, it's too loud here inside, but this evening in your sleeping room or anywhere else, you can try to make that noise with your lips and with your mouth, and then you can hear the Schall.
Echo.
Echo, yeah, the echo. Thank you.
You look like a bat.
Yes. And then you can hear the echo, and you can have orientation with that. And I think that's an interesting thing, because a lot of persons think blind people always feel uncomfortable if they have an unknown surrounding and if they have no kind of orientation. And I think there are a lot of helping things for orientation. For example, the cane or that listening thing. And for me, the interesting thing is blind persons have a lot of helping things you cannot see and are not very clear to everybody. And perhaps that is the thing why Andreas is leading persons through the darkness and, for example, let them go shopping on a market area or put them through with a boat over a river, and it's a true river, not just imagined river. And the blind guides who are working there in the darkness, they have the job, to talk to people and not to lead them by arm or something. And that's a very interesting thing, because persons listen to things they never heard before. But for me, blind people are not better listening, they're just better trained. And the interesting thing I think persons are doing in your darkness is they can learn it in the darkness perhaps, but they can use it as well in the daylight and have the advantage of both blind and sighted persons.
Yeah, but I think you were born blind, so you are professional blind, if I may say so. Did you ever thought, well, I'm blind, okay, I made my life, I'm a successful woman, I won gold medals, but is it a high price you had to pay? Do you think that you would be another person if you were born as an ordinary sighted person? So was somehow the blindness a case of blindness?
I would have been extraordinary in any way.
Yeah. Well, I
that's the only answer I can give on that question.
No.
I don't know really. It's an interesting thing, because I don't know if I would have been an athlete, for example, but perhaps I would have been a football player, or don't know really, a tennis player or something, and now I became an biathlete, and perhaps things would have been different if I was a sighted person. I think it would be, but I think the chance every one of us has to make with the circumstance you live with and with the abilities you live with, you do training on your abilities. That's one thing I believe in, and that's the same for blind and for sighted people, and to use your abilities perfectly and don't always think about things you don't have. And I think sighted people sometimes have the problem, they think blind people always think the whole day, if I was sighted, my life would be better. I just think about that, let me say, once or twice a day when I stand at a corner and can't read the house number or something. Then perhaps some moments are where I think, okay, now it would have been better to see myself and not ask any Japanese tourist in Munich or something. That are moments I think, okay, now other life would be easier.
Well, now I'm on a daily, exchange, encounter with blind people, so it's really part of my life. And of course, the question comes all the time up, well, how did you start your Dialog in the Dark empire? I'm the world market leader in dark business, so I can give you consultation later on how this works. But for me, I think the encounter was actually, the turning point in my life. I'm well, except the fact I'm a man, I'm not disabled. That means, honestly speaking, there was no clue about what disability actually means, and I had always this very, very negative notion, oh, if I would be blind, it would be horrible, and blah, blah, blah. But when I met my first blind, if I may say so, and he completely convinced me with his way to be, his personality, his ridiculous haircut. He was a very, very, strong guy, and I was so ashamed about myself that I thought this guy is poor and is needy and is weak, but he was in these days much, much stronger than myself. And through the encounter, well, I had the courage, I had the gut, I think, to set up my dark empire. So, well, thank you so much for listening. And, well, if you have questions later on, we will trust you blindly to find us. Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.